Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So this is an update to the previous piece of news I covered in one of my previous news videos, which was that apparently exclusive Korra comic content was going to be coming to Webtoon, the kind of digital comic platform, vertical scroll format. Not just that like they would have Turf Wars, they'd be doing the already existing comics, but that new stories would be coming to the platform as well. Now, this has a whole story to it where when we first got this news like 2 weeks ago, I think we ultimately settled on the idea that it probably only did mean the existing comics. But then, as I'll discuss here, Dark Horse retweeted an article, and the way they worded like the headline of that article and then the way the article itself reads changed the way most people saw the news, as in like, oh, all the other like news articles must have just kind of buried the lead here because this is not what we thought it was going to be. And so, yeah, the news then became exclusive Korra comics. Actually, turns out no, because as you can see here, the Avatarist, fellow Avatar YouTuber, reached out to Webtoon's PR and they confirmed that, yeah, it is just that the already existing comics are just going to be coming to Webtoon, reformatted to the vertical scroll format. Obviously, again, why was the wording on some of the stuff so weird? But it is what it is. It's always, I think, an indictment of the communication when a fan has to reach out to confirm, basically, if something is saying new or old. Like, if you break this down super simply, it's, did your press release announce old comics coming to the platform or new comics coming to the platform? And the idea is that, well, it didn't really say either, so what do you mean? And that's always a bit of a kind of crazy situation, because what I want to do, just beyond saying that this is the case, is I want to quickly kind of go through the whole situation here about sort of like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And really make it clear that, like, this is, in my mind, in no way on fans. This is not fans making up phantom news, kind of, I would say, misinterpreting pretty clear information. No, we were, I think, pretty good about how we tried to handle this. It's just that the clarity is not really there in where this actually came from. This is a combination of Webtoon themselves, Dark Horse themselves, and I would say in this case, like, primarily comicbook.com and how they reported on this information. So let's go through it here. So let's start with the press release here. So this is the Webtoon's investor relations website, which has the official kind of press release here. So you can see release details. This is what it is. So again, remember that this was like a multiple kind of franchise thing. Webtoons and Dark Horse, Korra is one of the things coming to the platform. But then you get into the details, and again, it lists those franchises. But then, interestingly, they separate Korra out from the rest, and it's like it's these four and new tales of Nickelodeon's Legend of Korra. It then says newly reformatted for Webtoon's vertical scroll format, but again, you go back to the previous sentence and it's like, well, one of the things in the previous sentence is different. So like, how can new tales be reformatted when they've never been quote unquote formatted in the first place? That sort of idea. New slate of titles. Like, a lot of this is sort of fine because like it is new to Webtoons, but new tales is not technically correct. And again, the reason for that is the actual news, the when you take away the fact that it's not exclusive content, is basically just that, I guess, they're starting with Turf Wars. Turf Wars and I guess Ruins of the Empire is coming to the Webtoons platform. Turf Wars came out in 2017, at least started coming out in 2017. That's 8 years ago. Getting close to 10 years ago. That's not a news story. There's no way you can refer to that as a news story. And that is a big part of what happens as you go through this, is Webtoon not being clear that it's that older content that is coming to the platform. They never say Turf Wars in this. They never say Ruins of the Empire. yes, as we kind of go into some of the way it was reported on, they do use the image that is the Turf Wars cover, but notably it's edited to remove the mention of Turf Wars, so it's just Legend of Korra comics. And again, because sort of the interpretation that we ended up having was sort of a combination of, well, it's new comics in addition to the older ones coming, as in like we do a follow-up then afterwards. This still works because when Korra first comes to the platform, we probably expect this to be like the cover image on the page for Korra comics, that sort of thing. So yeah, then we go through this whole section with quotes and stuff like that, and again, they don't really say anything. It's all PR speak about, hey, look at this deal, fans, you know, franchises, da da da. They don't really mention Korra. It's more about like Avatar comics, audience, you know, that sort of thing. Then you get into some of the details and it's like, okay, Legend of Korra. Vertical scrolling format exclusive to Webtoons. And it's like, okay, what Legend of Korra comics? You haven't actually said what they are. Oh, here's a description of the Legend of Korra comics, I guess. A continuation of Nickelodeon's animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender. Legend of Korra series follows Avatar Korra and her friends in their continuing adventures. That is a description of Legend of Korra as a franchise, not the comics at all. So this still is mind-numbingly vague in that they are not really talking about the Korra comics, really, even though they kind of are. The description is so vague to just describe the series rather than that should be a description of Turf Wars, realistically. And then the rest is just standard PR stuff where like this doesn't really matter. And you'll note as we go through that, is it clear what comics are actually coming, full stop? If you really know your stuff, if you're into the comics and you know what Webtoon is, you can probably figure it out, which I think was my thought process when I covered this as news like 2 weeks ago, which is that, okay, despite it saying this, it probably does just mean the original comics because I kind of know my stuff. But a lot of people just reading the initial announcement from like here, and I think Polygon covered it, were highlighting this, that it says new tales. And that is not what the news actually is. And again, it's not clear. Is it fully clear that it's new stuff? Is it fully clear that it's old stuff? No, it's somewhere in the middle, which is why like clarification was kind of in the end required, because it didn't say one thing or the other. And so I would ultimately say that this felt like a settled piece of news 2 weeks ago. So it was a big surprise when Dark Horse posted this on their social media. Now, they did this here on Twitter. Same exact post on Blue Sky, and I'm guessing some of their other platforms, but I haven't checked it up. Now, what they do here is they link to a comicbook.com article, which I'll show you in just a second, but they highlight the headline of this article. Legend of Korra and Plants vs. Zombies to launch Webtoon exclusive content. It's their collaboration with Webtoon. Okay. And again, this article is from 2 weeks ago. It's from like the 12th. So why are they highlighting this again on the 26th? And it almost felt like people were kind of highlighting that, like, well, this kind of got announced like 2 weeks ago, this whole Webtoons Korra thing, and no one really focused on it all that much because I think we just thought it was the old comics. So then when they highlighted it again, it was sort of like, did they reword headlines and kind of do stuff here? Because okay, Webtoon's exclusive content, like that reads in a very specific way to fans of Korra, fans of Korra comics, is that, oh, Legend of Korra, Webtoon exclusive content. Like every time I see this, my mind jumps to, you have new stories rather than, oh, the old stories are coming in a Webtoon exclusive format. Because it's not new content as such. Sure, they do a bit of work to change the comics from the typical format to the Webtoons format to make it vertical scroll, but it's a bit like you're misrepresenting the information, wording it like that, and not being clear. But anyway, we'll go into the article because we don't just read the headlines, of course. They still have this as their headline, of course. But anyway, the start of it is basically fine. You can tell that, again, most of these outlets base their article, I'm guessing, on the press release. I'm assuming they gave them these images as well as the press release, and that's how the article was constructed. So keep that in mind as we get to the second part of this article. So yeah, they have the new Tails line, okay. Reformatted, okay, that's fine. The turquoise image is at least here, so it kind of at least puts in your mind that, okay, it's the older stuff, I'm guessing. But then you get to the comicbook.com section where they explain Legend of Korra. For fans of Nickelodeon's animated hit Legend of Korra, this collaboration means a well-deserved and highly anticipated continuation of Avatar Korra's journey. The problem, the main problem is the next line, but this line is just as like problematic in my mind, because there's a weird tense aspect going on here where this collaboration, so Korra Comics Webtoons, means a continuation of Korra. And that, again, is something that reads in a very specific way to anyone who is a fan of the comics and stuff like that. As in, well, the comics have already been out and they've already continued the story. So this must be referring to the idea that it's the comics continuing past Ruins of the Empire because, you know, Korra comics have not really been anywhere in the last while. But either way, it's a very weird wording of the whole thing. Like, this collaboration means a continuation, a deserved and anticipated continuation. How is it anticipated when it's already happened and released? People, I don't think there's really that many people who are just like absolutely desperate for Korra comics to come to Webtoons, because again, the comics are out there. Some people are going to read it in that way just because it's official and free, which, by the way, there's your unique selling point that they don't really highlight anywhere in this. For Avatar and Korra fans, that's the way Webtoons should be marketing this, is that, do you want to read the existing Avatar and Korra comics? Do you want to read them for free? You can do so on our platform. That's the selling point here, not trying to frame it on the basis of like the format is the thing that people really care about, or trying to... I think this is where Webtoons, I think, gets themselves into trouble, is that they don't want to just outright say these are old comics. They want to highlight that they're comics, you might know about this, but it's new to our platform. And they don't want you to really linger on the idea that they're already out, because they want the Webtoons aspect to be the selling point. But then comicbook.com followed that lineup, which is already confusing, with exclusive new stories crafted specifically for Webtoon. What other way are you meant to interpret that? Like, you could break that down word by word and be like, okay, exclusive, sure, the format, the vertical scroll format is exclusive to Webtoons. It's new to Webtoon. They are stories, yes. They are crafted stories, sure. For Webtoon, the format for Webtoon, great. But the thing is, it's all those words together as like a singular descriptor for this comic. And is it an exclusive new story? No. Is it crafted specifically for Webtoon? The story wasn't, no. The format, yes, but this is why the word reformatted is, I think, used like in other places. And why this is not a good description. And I think this is the line that ultimately causes the major problem. Why this ended up being this kind of hype news, and then, oh, what a disappointment, nothing has happened, is comicbook.com caused the problem because it's their quote, which I don't know where they got this from, because again, if they're basing this off the press release, the press release doesn't say any of this about Korra. Now, it says like, oh, exclusive, new, you know, some of these words get used, but never combined together in that order. So how this whole issue happened is not, I think, this highly malicious, bad communication situation. It is I would say, a unfortunately poorly worded press release from Webtoon that is not quite up to standard, but is not like actively like, you know, bad false advertising type thing. But yeah, it doesn't say very clearly what it's doing. But we sort of figured it out from here. So Webtoon responsible, at least to a certain degree, for what happened here. But then Dark Horse, I think Dark Horse are responsible as well, because they link the article, which we've already established is quite badly worded when it comes to the Korra section especially. And they include the headline, which is misleading. And again, this is 2 weeks after the fact. So it's like, oh, was there something we missed? And then you go into this article and boom. These 2 lines say what they say very clearly. And I think you have to be in a very specific situation in terms of what information you do and don't know to interpret what it says here as just being turf wars. Because it says what it says. Exclusive news stories crafted specifically for Webtoons, which is not what we're getting. So I want to be clear about this as well. This is not like, oh, Avatar Studios strikes again. I don't really feel Avatar Studios is overly involved in this. You know, somewhere down the road, because ultimately, you know, Dark Horse have the license, I guess, from Avatar Studios. Thus, Webtoons, I guess, have the license through Dark Horse and Avatar Studios. But I don't really think Avatar Studios are writing Webtoons press release for them. I don't think Avatar Studios is writing this social media post for Dark Horse. And I certainly don't think Avatar Studios wrote this article for comicbook.com. It's those 3 together that made this happen. And look, it's super frustrating. Because this update takes it from this really hype piece of news where Korra is finally getting the kind of comic expansion we've wanted for years, the one-shots. Even when we get more of them, it's not going to be enough. We want more comics. We want to return to a more regular style of comic, which is what an exclusive Webtoons comic would have been if that was actually the news. So this is a hugely frustrating one because our hopes got up and now they're back down to nothing. Because ultimately, these comics already exist. For certain fans, it's cool that these books are coming to the platform. Because like I said, it is a way to read the comics officially and for free if you wait long enough for it all to kind of be out there. I will say, do keep in mind that as part of this deal, exclusive comics, I think, are on the table at some point down the line for Webtoons. They literally mentioned it themselves at one of the panels in one of the previous Comic Cons, but it's obviously not happening yet. We'll see if they say anything at the upcoming San Diego Comic Con, but that's not what they're saying here. So, you know, I wouldn't ever rule out the idea that we get something along these lines, because obviously this deal and the fact that they're expanding the partnership is obviously doing quite well for them. And it's going to eventually get to a point where, like, yeah, we need to take the next step with this. We need to probably have our own stuff. And that makes sense. And they need to come up with that side of the deal as well. So yeah, I'll just wrap this up by just highlighting that, again, remember, there are still new Legend of Korra comics coming out. Yes, we're in an unfortunate situation where they haven't been announced yet, but Mystery of Pension Island, the Mako solo comic, was the first of a one-shot trilogy. So at the very least, there are 2 more books that we are going to get, because that Mystery of Pension Island has to be collected into a hardcover at some point, and they need more content, so the other 2 books have to happen. I'm assuming we will find out about the next one, so one-shot number 2, and who it's about, probably at San Diego Comic-Con. If not San Diego Comic-Con, then it will be New York Comic-Con, and if not then, obviously we have problems. But let's hope that, you know, they have got going again, because the Mako comic was only a few months ago. We're hopefully getting on track once again with the core comics that we do have. And who knows? There might still be other things that we don't know about that get announced, and there might be more Korra. But I think the real frustration about this is that, like, yeah, of course this kind of bad communication news saga happened with a Legend of Korra related piece of news. Of course we got our hopes up for a piece of new Korra stuff, and it was actually not what we thought it was. Not because of us doing anything particularly wrong, but just because of a bunch of people from different companies not really knowing how to word things properly. And it requiring, you know, again, someone to reach out and be like, what does this mean? To get a clear answer and actually confirm that it is just the original already existing comics. So that's that. Probably spent too long on it, but I think on the channel, the reason I went through that in such detail was just that this is a thing I think we've had to do a lot this year, which is kind of realize that just because an article is done by one of the kind of perceived as being like really good sources doesn't mean they have maybe reported on it super well. The amount of times this year where I'm kind of like, where's the press release for this? Like, I don't really care what your article is where you've like reworded the press release. Can you just show me the actual press release so I can actually have the source of this information? And this is probably a key example to it, because they seemed like they just made up a bunch of stuff when it came to like the way they wrote this, given that this is the source material. And that's super important. I already get frustrated quite a bit when Avatar Korra fans, one, either only read the headline, never actually read the article, or potentially don't even read the headline and just read a kind regurgitated headline that as it goes through the various kind of news cycles and stuff like that. Like, it's sort of important, like, sourcing of actual pieces of news, I think, is something that isn't great in the fandom, and I think it just needs to be better. And, you know, as well as that, of course, I think a lot of the outlets do need to be a little bit better about that as well here, because they caused this issue, not us. Only other piece of news is just that this book, the How to Draw Avatar The Last Airbender book, is out next week. July 1st is the release date for this book. Again, I covered the fact that we do have preview pages for this a little bit ago, but just to quickly kind of skim through them again, just so you have an idea. It is more of a kind of kids basic, you know, how to draw book. One of these ones where it just kind of takes you through it kind of step by step. Let's go to the Aang one here, where it is just like, hey, draw these shapes like this, then put these bits on top of it. There's not a lot of text guiding you through it. It is drawing a lot of the stock art. So, you know, it is what it is, but it's there if you are interested. But that is the news. So in the comments, let me know, I suppose, mainly what your thoughts are on the whole situation with the Legend of Korra Webtoon announcement. What's your experience kind of as we went through the various stages of this, kind of what happened? Who do you think is, I suppose, mostly at fault for this kind of going so wrong? Let me know. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.